you through about 50 frameworks really quickly to try to explain to you how I see this future work and how I see you all in it. So I'm going to start with my future work thesis. Then I'm going to move into quick macro context so you can understand some of the changes taking place. Then what do those changes mean for humans? Because at the end of the day, we're workers, but we're humans first. How those changes are changing work. And then my question in education is, what are we really doing? And I think it's time to ask what we're doing right now. And then sort of my thesis on why it's work to learn, and then I'll summarize. So my future work thesis, I believe three things. I believe the future of work is learning and adapting. And that learning and adapting isn't about codifying and transferring new skills into humans. And it's not all about lunging at coding or technical digital skills. Digital skills and data literacies are really important, but it's about learning how to learn so you can learn continuously. And in order to do that, I think we're looking at the wrong stuff. I think we have to start with identity, then we have to build mindsets for learning, and then we have to look at enablers. And enablers to me are uniquely human skills that make you better at what you do. Some people use the term soft skills. I don't, because that was created when hard skills were what men did, math and science, and soft skills were what women did. And I don't think gendering this helps any of us. So my kind of overarching thesis is that life existed in three bands. First you had education, then you had career, then you had retire. Whether you went to university or not, education was that first third of your life. And the only job of education was to get you on the career ladder, get you on that escalator. You collected a pension, and then by design you died a year later. That worked when it worked. It doesn't work anymore. The success measures for education really were to be codify and transfer those right skills into people to get you on that career ladder, to give you the right existing knowledge. Now I think it looks like this. Life expectancy is not 90 yet, but it will be soon. Education becomes learning because education to me implies an end state of being educated, and learning there is no end state. Career becomes leverage to signal that work and learning are the same thing, so it's leverage of that learning. And then acknowledging that humans are living a whole lot longer, retirement really becomes longevity, and how do we deal with longevity? So it looks more like this. That career ladder becomes a web. Luke Glazier says it's rock climbing. I've heard other people describe it as surfing. Later in life, we remain engaged. My parents who are watching this retired at 57. They got bored. My mother started a company at 65. She's 75, assessing now whether or not she'll retire at 80 or keep going. Right now, 4.4% of the workforce over 85, and that's not just Ruth Bader Ginsburg, are in the workforce. It's the highest percentage of people we've had in the workforce. At the same time, on the lower end, we have the lowest number of young people we've ever had in the workforce since the 1970s. And there are real implications of that because they're not getting the tacit knowledge that they need. Success measures in this world are, have we built resilient and adaptive identities? Have we built agile learning mindsets? Have we helped them develop those critical enablers so that they can learn continuously and add and delete skills like we add and delete applications on our phone? So I think one of the big shifts is occupational. So in the past, we learned in order to work. And we learned once in order to work. And now we must work in order to learn continuously. And in that past, our identity was bestowed upon us. So your identity was the job you had, the union you belonged to, the school you went to. That was how you defined yourself. When that happens, that also can be taken away from you. And now I think we need to go into more of a self-actualized, is a little kind of a fancy word for it, but some sort of internally bestowed identity, where our identity isn't beholden to anyone who can take it away. So age of accelerations, this is giving us the macro context of some of the things that are taking place in the world. Here I defer to my friend and mentor, Thomas Friedman, who I've had the good fortune of crossing paths with. He says we're in the middle of three simultaneous climate changes at once. First, it's the climate of technology. This is Moore's Law. Moore's Law basically says that every 18 to 24 months, computer chips double in capacity and drop in price. So an easy way to understand this is on the 50th anniversary of Moore's Law, they calculated what that could mean in a way we'd understand. And they took a 1971 Volkswagen Beetle, that happens to be the year I was born, and they said if that Volkswagen Beetle carried the same trajectory as Moore's Law, it would go 200,000 miles an hour, get 2 million miles a gallon, and cost 4 cents. That's the amount of technological innovation that's happened in my lifetime. The second climate change is the climate of the climate. The UN says we have 12 years to change our behavior. NASA said, I think it was yesterday, last year we had the 4th hottest year on record. And all 4 of those were in the last 18 years. We have a short period of time to change our behaviors. And the impact already is we're seeing unprecedented wildfires, floods, superstorms, and droughts. This is causing massive human migration. And then the third climate change is the climate of the market. And this used to be stuff on shipping containers, and we had trade wars. It's now digital flows. There's nothing to stop digital flows. There's no friction in digital flows. So 2 examples. 1, when Obama went into Cuba to open the embassy there, 3 months later they had 3,000 Airbnb listings. We couldn't build hotels that quickly. Right now, the top 10 populations in the world, can you guess what they are? Audience participation? Anybody, shout it out. China, yes. India, yes. No third? Brazil. No, okay, you're right, because the top 10 populations, only 2 of them are countries. The rest of them are social media platforms. Facebook, Google, YouTube, Tencent, and all of it happened in the last 5 years. That's the speed of change. Tom says these 3 climate changes are reshaping our world across 5 dimensions. He works in the world of politics. I'm not going to get into politics, but the 5 dimensions are work and learning, lifelong learning, and adaptation is a must. Politics, no more left and right. Geopolitics, our enemies and our allies are now shifting. Community, it's ideology over geography. We now spend in the developed world 51% of our time online, which means we're spending more time, not with our neighbors, but with people who have the same ideas we do. Ethics, we need new guardrails, whether it's driverless cars or what AI does or how an AI system reads an application. So I focus my attention on the work and learning piece, but I think it's important to keep all the 5 dimensions in mind. So what does this change mean for humans? So we've got this unprecedented technological change that's growing exponentially. And at the same time, we're living longer. So if you were born in 1750, you could expect to live to 37 years. The steam engine came out, you had 2.5 generations to absorb that change. Now, we're gonna have so many changes that you're gonna have multiple paradigm shifts within a single generation. And humans are not ready to adapt to that level of change, and I don't think we're giving enough empathy for some people who are dealing with it. So, after one of my talks, somebody came up to me and started crying, and then somebody else came up to me and started crying, and I thought, oh, I didn't think this is a really bummer talk. So what's really going on? And I realized humans are under tremendous stress, some more than others. And people are feeling a little lost. And I was trying to figure out why. Is it just technology? Is it just the speed of technology that's freaking people out? The fear of displacement? And I realized that the only thing moving faster than technology is culture. And there are 3 questions that, some of them are internal monologues, things we ask and answer for ourselves. Some of them are part of our sort of socialized dialogues. And they are basically, who are you? What do you do? And where are you from? I think those 3 questions are really changing when you think about them. So I started making a list. I started making a list of things that either have changed or are on the cusp of changing in real fundamental ways. Racially, we are going from a white majority to a white minority. That makes a lot of people really uncomfortable. Religion, we have been a Judeo-Christian norm, and let's face it, it's a really Christian norm. We could say Merry Christmas to anybody without really regarding what their religion may be. In 2015, Harvard entered its first entry class with more atheists than Christians in its entire history. So we're seeing more, not only diversity of religion, but also absence of religion. Age, we've been a youth to middle-age culture. That's what our whole advertising industry is. Now we're becoming an aging society. In 2027, 2030, about then, we'll have more people over 65 than under 14. Family, for the longest time, it was mom and dad and 2.5 kids. Birth rate's changing. As a middle child, I am now extinct. We're losing our middle children. It's a sort of a family unit that's not going to, a member of the family unit that's not going to be there anymore. And we're going to have more types of families. We already do. There are single moms, or mom and moms, dads and dads, grandparents, aunts, uncles. The family structure is really changing. Gender identity. This one is moving the fastest. From my notes, it's probably about 2010 when it really started taking shape. If you're in a higher ed institution now, you may have on the bottom of your emails the personal pronouns you prefer to signal your gender identity. If you take the tube in London right now, their subway, metro, whatever, They used to say, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. 2016, 17, they started saying, good morning, everyone. So we're going from fixed and binary to gender fluid. Education, we had a long, if you got a degree at all, it was a single dose. And now it's continuous learning. Consent and power. Sexual harassment was permissible. I mean, they joked about it on Mad Men. It was just part of the culture. The Me Too and Time's Up movement is reshaping. It's reshaping politics right now in Virginia. It's reshaping the media industry. So 200, I think, people have been removed, both males and females, mostly males, but both males and females. Occupation used to be a fixed employee identity. Now we have to think differently. You know, is it a portfolio of self-expression? Seems a little flowery, but how do we think about our work when it's not one single job identity? Leadership and authority. White males, you guys had a great run. But it's changing. It's changing. If you saw those white suits in the State of the Union, we're having a real different type of leadership, both in gender and in racial profile. Expertise was earned and credentialed. I'm not standing in front of you because of any book I wrote, any company I work for, any degree I have. It's because I started explaining stuff, and it went out on social media. I crossed paths with Thomas Friedman, which was just luck. And now this is all I do. And it was because I've developed a personal brand and I've developed a network. And more people are going to work this way. Human relationships, they've long been face-to-face. Increasingly, they're online. That's how people meet. Most of people meet their mates that way, their spouses, their partners, online. Most of us form our relationships that way. Most of us find our work that way. And then our populations, as I mentioned, used to be countries, now they're social media platforms. So if you look at that list, and it's an abridged list, the first 5 dimensions are really about who we are and how we define ourselves. The next 4 or 5 are about what we do and how we express ourselves. And the last 2 are about where we're from or how we connect and create community. And so these changes are really happening, and I don't think we have enough empathy for what it's like for some people who now feel left out, while other people now feel included. So what does this mean to work? The era where anything mentally routine or predictable soon will be able to achieve by an algorithm. And that's a whole lot of work. The Frey Osborne, which is the famed model, says it's maybe half of the work in the United States right now. There are other models that say it's even more. And then the whole concept of education being codifying and transferring skills. So if you want to be this profession, well, here are the things you need to know. Here are the 4 years, 2 years, 3 years you need to sit through to get those skills, and then you're fine. That doesn't work anymore. So we're entering the 4th industrial revolution. The first one was steam. The second one was mechanization of labor and electricity. The third was computerization and labor automation. And the 4th is artificial intelligence and cyber physical, which is really the Internet of Things, where it's where everything around you has some intelligence in it. McManus from Autodesk says this is when things wake up. There's sort of a creepy way of thinking about it, but I think that's fairly accurate. I think it's important to think about the difference between the 3rd and the 4th industrial revolution, because in some ways we're in the middle of them. Some industries are squarely in the 3rd, some are in the 4th. So in the 3rd industrial revolution, the technological innovation was computerization and automation of labor. In the 4th, it's the merging of digital, biological, physical systems. That's just internet going into everything. The vocational displacement in the 3rd industrial revolution was routine manual labor. You guys know that in Detroit, we lost 5 million manufacturing jobs. In the 4th, it's going to be routine cognitive labor, and that's going to happen even more quickly because the software that can replace the human can scale a whole lot faster than those fixed robots. Your competitive advantage in the 3rd industrial revolution was your specific expertise and your stored knowledge. In the 4th, it's going to be, I believe, your identity, your mindset, your enablers, your ability to learn and adapt. Education and training in the 3rd industrial revolution was a factory pipeline to work. So it was get good grades, get into a good school, get a first job, get in a good company, get on that escalator. Now it's lifelong learning and adaptation. And then the way we use tools in the 3rd industrial revolution were tools of production to extract value. So you had to learn that software package in order to use it to be more productive. In the 4th, it's going to be tools of value creation. So you're going to use tools that help you understand gaining insights from data. You're going to learn with the tool, and you're going to learn from the tool. So the 3rd industrial revolution, I say, is learn to work. The 4th is work to learn. And we're in the middle right now. And that's causing a lot of tension in terms of what you do as an educational institution. So everybody sort of is lunging at, we just got to get more STEM graduates. That's going to solve all our problems. And I think what's really interesting is this work by David Deming at Harvard, who has looked at STEM skills are really programs that are with high math skills. And he said, let's look back, in his case, to the 80s and say, okay, where has work changed? So if you had low math skills and you had low social skills, those jobs have been on the decline. That's not surprising. And if you had high math skills and high social skills, those jobs have really been increasing and we can't even fill them at the moment. Also not surprising. But if you had high math skills and low social skills, those actually have been on the decline since the 80s, and we haven't really paid attention to that. But what's actually growing is even if you have low math skills and you have high social skills, those jobs have been increasing, but we're not doing anything to develop those social skills, those enablers, soft skills if you must. Another thing that's happening is we're not preparing people for this change. And I think it connects to the identity crisis. But a study of studies, so it's a series of studies that is the only people I know looking at this who said that the loss of a job can take twice as long to recover from as the loss of a private relationship. And for some people, they never fully bounce back. So my question is, where are we teaching people to learn and adapt? Are we talking about job loss? At any age in school, at any point in the workforce, are we talking about how you learn and adapt? That losing your job isn't losing yourself, how you reformulate, how you create new value after a position. We're not doing that right now. I think it's a really important thing we start doing. And then I have a personal mission, and it's to get rid of these three questions. What do you want to be when you grow up? It's absurd. The Bureau of Labor Statistics said in '99 that 65% of the jobs haven't been created yet. I've heard since then the number's even higher. So we're asking a little kid to think about what they want to be based upon a limited amount of experience they have. Then we get myopic about picking a good major or an area of study. Research from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York says that 27% of people ever work in the field of their undergraduate major. So think about it. We tell people to get good grades. We push them into something because we think it's going to be a high-paying job, whether or not they're interested in it. We ask them to pick that major before they get to university or college or whatever. Tell them never to take anything outside of it because they really got to focus. That job may not be there, or they may never work in it. What are we doing? That's educational malpractice. And then we ask each other, what do we do? It's the first thing we ask each other. Is that really the most important information? But we're socialized to do it. And for people who've been displaced or in the process of changing jobs, it's a crisis. They avoid social situations and they become further isolated. The best research I've seen on this is from the Foundation for Young Australians that says that young people graduating today will have upwards of 17 jobs across 5 different industries. And that's not just Australia. Their research covers the entire developed world, so that's true for us as well. So education, what are we really doing? So if we think about education and we think about the process of learning and say, okay, there's a continuum, there's divergent learning, learning to ask a lot of questions, and convergent learning, getting the right answer. Then we have social emotional intelligence, and we have cognitive intelligence. Kindergarten and Montessori school starts out there with high social emotional intelligence, high discovery, high inquiry. Then high school, higher ed, whatever higher ed means for you. What's your convergent intelligence? Because that's the only thing we're going to measure. What are you going to do with your life? And then our workforce development skills gaps are here. So this is a myopic focus on what, leaving why entirely behind, and not even really addressing the hows and whys. I put this kid up there. I didn't put my own picture up there because I don't know if my mother still has one, but this was me. When did this single grade or single series of grades in any subject, which tends to be math lately, determine your future? Why are we doing that? There's a great TED Talk, I can't remember this woman's name, but she says we got to stop saying no or failure and say not yet. Everybody's got we're all continuing to become, we're all continuing to learn and adapt. I like this quote from Marina Gorvis from the Institute of the Future. The Institute of the Future is a think tank out in Palo Alto. They just celebrated their 50th year of trying to help companies think about the future. Marina says, as soon as we close the digital divide, we stop our obsession about digital skills, the next one that's going to open is the motivational divide. Because those who are going to thrive are going to be the ones who can learn and adapt. And I think the only way you can learn and adapt is if we light that motivational fire. What are you interested in? Because I can't manufacture motivation for anybody, neither can you. So my work to learn thesis, I think it's like an iceberg, and I think we're looking at it all wrong. So if you think about an iceberg, the top of it, I think, is the skills to do. That's what we're lunging at. What can you do? What's your major? What did you study? Who are you? Below that is the enablers, which I think we're mostly missing. Those are the uniquely human skills. Below that is a mindset. I call it an agile learning mindset, but call it whatever you want to. The ability to learn and adapt, understanding how you learn. And then below that is your identity, which has got to be resilient and adaptive. So one of the concepts that I hear repeatedly, particularly in higher ed, it's a change management thing from corporate called, we just got to realize we're on a burning platform. We got to create the burning platform. It's this idea that that's going to be the impediment to change, burning platform. And it's interesting because this idea came from a tragic accident. In 1988, in the North Sea, an oil rig worker woke up. His whole room was on fire. Platform form was on fire. He made a split-second decision and jumped 15 stories into the ocean, knowing that he only had 20 minutes to live because the ocean was so cold. And he was one of the 63 people who survived, and they said to him, "Why'd you jump?" And he said, "I'd rather fry than die." And they said, well, the reporter who covered it said, "Oh, I guess he really was saying I'd rather have probable death than certain death." And this is the model we're using to inspire change. I think our lunging at skill sets and our really, I just came from a conference down in DC with some political folks who are saying, okay, what are the disruptors and what are the skills we need to codify and transfer into people? I'm like, you're just creating another burning platform. And here I refer to Peter Sheehan is a great thought leader I'm starting to learn from, and he says, the burning platform is all about trying to motivate people with fear. It's a terrible idea. What we need to do instead is light the fire of burning ambition. Let's stop leading with fear and start leading with inspiration. So I have this concept of the agile learning mindset, and I've developed into a curriculum at one university and done a bunch of workshops on it. And it's basically like, what is the real 21st century set of common skills everybody needs to have, or that compass? And I think it starts with agency. How do you get somebody to understand that learning is their responsibility, understand what motivates them so they have that fire to propel themselves? Then how do you develop learning agility? How do you develop the ability to learn and adapt? How do you understand how you learn? We used to only need to understand how we learn to get through school. Now if we're going to learn for life, we have to understand a lot more about how we learn. Then it's adaptability. How do you deal with unstructured problems or ambiguous situations? A lot of people are uncomfortable with that. You have to become much more comfortable with that. And then the fourth piece of it is awareness. So you can be driven by purpose and passion and learn anything you want, but the reality is we live in a society that has a market that's got to pay for what you do so you can pay for yourself. So it's a self-awareness and a market awareness. So you have to understand how you create value, and you have to understand the organization you work with, how they create value, and how those two things connect. So seems like everybody's got their top 10 list of future skills. Here I just highlight two. One's by the Institute of the Future of Work, the other one's by the World Economic Forum. Institute of the Future of Work, which is that 50-year-old think tank, says it's social intelligence, sense-making, novel adaptive thinking, design mindset, cognitive load management, computational thinking, transdisciplinarity, virtual collaboration, cross-cultural competency, and new media literacy. World Economic Forum has a similar list. I'm not going to read it, it's almost the same. The Institute of the Future Work, there is a group working on trying to figure out how to develop these skills. That's Future Work Skills Academy. And they cluster them like this, or I cluster them like this. I think the first set of them is human-to-human interface. If the machines can do everything mentally routine and predictable, how do we get better at working with each other? The next set is human operating skills. If the machines can do everything mentally routine and predictable, how do we navigate in that? How do we operate as humans? And then the last piece of it is, how do we navigate in this new world? And I call them the human navigation skills. I don't think we have enough people working on this. The Future Work Skills Academy is looking at it. They're one of the first groups looking at it. I think that's really exciting. So if we look back at that iceberg, and we rethink it, I think you start with identity. You've got to create really resilient and adaptive identities. We have to do this from a young age with young kids. Also have to do it with our existing workforce. How adaptive and resilient is our existing workforce? If your business model changed, how many of your workers could adapt? Mindset. How much do you talk about learning? Learning takes place in work all the time. Work is learning. How often do you acknowledge it? How often do you reinforce it? How often do you recognize it? And then the enablers, the uniquely human skills. I talk to executives all the time who tell me that the greatest skills gaps they have are rarely technical. They're mostly behavioral, but nobody knows how to talk about it. Nobody knows how to do interventions around it. Nobody knows how to do behavioral training, because that's what these enablers are, is really behavioral stuff, and it's really hard. Think about your own primary relationship. Let's face it, that's the only place we really work on our own behavior, and it's not easy. Who likes feedback at home? I don't. Skills to do. These are the skills for which you're hired. We will have many of those. We have to set up the expectation that we're going to learn and adapt. So to summarize this and to prepare ourselves for the panel, I think the world used to look like this. We had the education bucket, the work bucket, the retirement bucket, and we sort of moved through it like that. We were productive in our work lives. And then this idea has emerged that, okay, we're, to some degree, to acknowledge we're working longer, we created this sort of little reskilling moment. It looks like a camel that we move through it. And I call it the faulty logic model, because I don't think it makes any sense. It doesn't acknowledge identity, it doesn't acknowledge learning, and it sets up the expectation that that one dose is going to be okay for the rest of your life. What I think is the buckets turn on their side, and we move through them like that. And for many of you guys in the room who are in industry or in community colleges are uniquely set up to be that solution for any age group. So I think we're also coming out of this value you bring mindset. And the value you bring mindset is a CV or a resume mindset. I got my job because of the things I did or because of the degree I have. I'm credentialed as if that's some sort of insulation. I'm valued for my past experiences. Not that they're not important, but what have you done for me lately? And you're valued on what you know and what answers you can provide, and often to known problems. And I think we need to move into a value that you create mindset, which is an entrepreneurial mindset. What value are you creating today? How are you continuously learning? Having a bit of a beginner's mindset, being able to say, I don't know, let's find out. Learning becomes more important than knowing, and really good questions based on insights are better than answers to old problems, because those questions are probably not even relevant anymore. So we used to look at a career like you're on a sailboat and you've got a journey you got to get to, so just stay the course, don't get distracted, don't take anything outside your major. And now it's more like this, ride the wave. And I use this picture because it's actually from the Guinness Book of World Records from 2015. It's the most people ever on a surfboard in Long Beach, California, because you're not going to be on that surfboard alone. Most of work is social, and most of work is working with others. So think about the wave you're on, when it's going to crash, how you're going to get on the next one, and it sets up that expectation. So I heard somebody say recently, we got to think about education as from cradle to career. I want to correct that. I think it's before cradle. I think it's talking to parents before they have kids about what they're going to think about their kids. And it's not to career, it's through career. And I think that's a shift that actually positions really well for community colleges. So my summary again is future work is learning and adapting. And it's about learning faster than your competition as individuals and as organizations. And it's not just about technical skills. It's about learning over knowing. It's about constantly learning. And with all this stuff about technology taking our jobs, I think humans are dramatically underrated. I'm really optimistic about humans, but we have to make some of these shifts in how we think about ourselves. And I think that has to do with thinking about identity first, mindset, enablers, and then the skill sets. And with that, I hope that's the right context to set us up for a panel discussion. And I want to thank you very much for your attention.